They tried to break me with silence, with humiliation, with the kind of disdain that eats through bone. But when the people meant to love me most turned their backs, I didn't fall apart. I reshaped myself. This isn't just a story about what they did. It's about what I did with the ruins they left behind. Not revenge, transformation. Not spite, survival. They used to call me a mistake, not whisper behind closed doors but loud enough for the world to hear. My parents, Claudia and Raymond Holt, made a performance of it. They tore my wedding invitation into shreds in front of nearly 40 guests inside their glittering Atlanta penthouse, champagne glasses raised, jazz playing faintly in the background. My mother's jeweled nails glimmered as she ripped the thick cardstock in half. "Garbage deserves garbage," she said, letting the pieces drift to the marble floor like ashes. My father chuckled, raising his whiskey glass as though cruelty deserved applause. I stood frozen. I had hand-delivered that envelope myself, trembling with one last fragment of hope. Outside, my fiancé, Deshawn, waited in the car, unaware that while he hummed to the radio I was being gutted. My brother, Maurice, lounged against the mahogany mantel, scrolling through his phone with a smirk. The Holt family's golden child, the banker who had been showered with opportunities, prep schools, luxury cars, applause for every mediocre milestone. Me. I had clawed my way through a design degree, scraped to pay rent on a studio, and earned a place at a small but respected firm. But none of that mattered. I was invisible in their eyes, always a shadow standing next to Morris's spotlight. As the torn invitation fell to the ground, memories surged back like an angry tide. My 10th birthday, when Maurice rode a rented horse while I was given a lecture about being grateful. My high school graduation, when my parents slipped out halfway through my speech to catch Morris's fundraiser downtown. Every holiday, every achievement, swallowed by the sun they'd already crowned as worthy. That night I didn't fight. I didn't cry in front of them. I gathered what little pride I had left and walked straight to the elevator. When I slid into Deshawn's car, he smiled softly, reaching for my hand. "What happened?" he asked once we pulled away. "They made their choice," I whispered, my eyes fixed on the blurred skyline of Atlanta. But inside, something twisted. Not from heartbreak, from clarity. This wasn't the end. This wasn't defeat. It was the beginning. And they had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks later, unable to sleep, I scrolled through my phone and froze. My brother Morris's birthday gala had taken over social media. Photos glittered across every feed, a ballroom dripping in ivory and gold, walls lined with imported roses, guests in gowns and tuxedos clinking glasses under a chandelier the size of a car. A jazz trio played from a raised platform while Maurice stood at center stage in a cream tuxedo, flaunting a diamond watch that easily cost more than my entire student loan debt. My mother's caption beneath one photo cut like a blade, "Our brightest star." My father's echoed, "Maurice Holt, our legacy, our pride." I stared at the screen, not because I envied the spectacle, but because of the contrast. 2 weeks earlier, they shredded my wedding invitation in front of strangers. Yet here they were, showering him with praise as though he were royalty. I hadn't even known about the party. No text, no call, no acknowledgement. I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. But then something else caught my eye. Behind Maurice in several photos was a banner for the Holt Initiative, a so-called non-profit dedicated to mentoring inner-city youth. Smiling teens posed for stage press shots. Articles boasted of scholarships and testimonials. Yet in every image, Maurice was wrapped in luxury, tailored suits, new cars, endless champagne. The gala itself looked less like a charity event and more like a coronation. Something felt wrong. Digging deeper, I found a LinkedIn post from a former board member hinting at financial irregularities. A journalist friend confirmed in hushed tones. The numbers didn't add up. It smelled less like generosity and more like a tax shelter draped in glitter. That night, as Deshawn slept beside me, I sat in the dark with scraps of my shredded invitation spread across the table. For the first time, I didn't ache for their approval. I wanted something else entirely. I wanted them to watch me rise in a way so undeniable, so radiant, that their silence would become a prison of their own making. Deshawn, quiet and steady, had always been dismissed by my family as ordinary. They never knew that he wasn't ordinary at all. One rainy Thursday night, I passed by our study and heard him on a call. His tone was sharp, commanding. "No delays," he said firmly. "Push it through, or I'll cut the funding." I paused, startled. Peeking in, I saw a virtual boardroom of executives, hanging on his every word. Deshawn, in sweatpants and a hoodie, was leading a multi-million-dollar negotiation as casually as ordering takeout. When the call ended, I stepped inside. Who were those people? He closed his laptop slowly. "We need to talk." That was the night I learned the truth. Deshawn wasn't just a software engineer. He was the founder of North Star Technologies, a discreet but powerful company contracting with governments and global corporations. He had started it from his dorm, hidden his identity through shell companies, and kept the empire quiet to avoid the spotlight. "You let them call you average," I whispered. "I needed to be sure you loved me," he said softly. "Not what I built." I laughed, not bitter, but in disbelief. My family, obsessed with appearances, had sneered at a man quietly listed among the youngest billionaires in the country. He reached into a drawer and handed me a slim folder. Inside were blueprints. Not for a home, for an estate on the cliffs of California's coast. "It's ours now," he said. "Closed yesterday. I wanted to wait until the right moment to tell you. Let's build something together. Not to prove them wrong, to prove us right." That night, as rain whispered against the windows, I lay awake feeling something new. Not pain, not fear, power. The estate felt like a dream carved into stone and glass, rising out of the California coastline like it had always belonged there. 43,000 square feet of modern design, perched above an endless horizon where the Pacific bled into the sky. From above, it looked like a sanctuary, terraces floating above the waves, walls dissolving into light, gardens blooming year-round with flowers from every corner of the world. Deshawn placed the keys in my hand with a quiet smile. "Your canvas," he said. "Design whatever your spirit wants." It wasn't just the most extravagant gift I'd ever received. It was freedom. I spent weeks with a hand-picked team of builders, redesigning the estate into more than a home. It would be a stage, a declaration, a world where no one could shrink me again. We began planning the wedding in complete secrecy. Every vendor signed airtight NDAs. Every RSVP was coded, triple verified by a small legal team. Only those who had walked beside us in truth would stand at that altar. Not one halt. The guest list was deliberate. Entrepreneurs, humanitarians, artists, survivors, and dreamers. People who carried legacy, not just titles. The theme wasn't luxury. It was rebirth. A friend of mine, a television producer, offered to film the ceremony as a global charity broadcast. She called it the designer's promise, a wedding that would fund scholarships for young black women entering architecture and STEM. The idea lit a fire inside me. "Let them keep their headlines," Deshawn said. "We'll make impact." Quietly, he funneled millions into the scholarship foundation. The event would stream worldwide, not as a spectacle, but as a movement. I sketched the ceremony layout myself. Open-air aisles stretching over the ocean, guests seated in curved rows like the arms of a galaxy, the altar minimalist and transparent, all glass and reflection. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a reclamation. Back in Atlanta, I knew my family would hear about it eventually. Not through invitations, but through the noise of a world they couldn't control. And when they did, they would realize too late. The daughter they discarded had built something eternal. 2 days before the ceremony, a package arrived at the estate. Small, wrapped in tacky gold foil with no return address. Inside was a card scrawled in my mother's handwriting. "Since you enjoy pretending, we thought we'd play along. Hope your little fantasy works out." Beneath it lay an invitation, a cheap, cartoonish mockery. It claimed our wedding would be held in a rented recreation hall on Atlanta's South Side, with a potluck reception and a Craigslist DJ. My stomach clenched. They had sent dozens of these. I knew it. That evening, a cousin confirmed it. She forwarded me screenshots of a family group chat where relatives cackled over the fake invite, calling me desperate for attention, and joking about my public breakdown. It was disgusting, but it didn't sting anymore. Not the way it once had. Instead, it confirmed the truth. Their grip on the narrative was slipping. Their cruelty had lost its shine. This pathetic stunt wasn't power, it was desperation. I showed the invitation to Deshawn. He read it quietly, his face unreadable. "Do you want me to respond?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. We don't waste energy on them. We go forward exactly as planned. If they try to crash it—" I paused, a small smile tugging at my lips. "They won't make it past the gates." That night, Deshawn's parents arrived. Warm, grounded, loving. They had treated me like their own daughter from the very beginning. His mother hugged me and whispered, "You don't need to forgive them. You just need to live so fully, so brightly, that they can never shadow you again." For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. By morning, the estate was locked down tighter than a presidential retreat. Security teams scanned every entrance. Guest lists were face verified. Media access was limited. Helicopter surveillance swept the skies. Let them send all the fake invitations they wanted. The real one was already changing the world. The morning of our wedding arrived like a blessing wrapped in sunlight. Golden beams spilled across the Pacific, flooding the estate with warmth. Inside, the halls buzzed with quiet precision. Florists placed the last orchids. Stylists adjusted gowns. A quartet tuned their instruments on a floating platform in the reflecting pool. Every detail shimmered with intention. I stood in my suite, wrapped in a silk robe, staring at the gown behind me, hand-beaded, weightless, luminous, as though it had been stitched from constellations. "You ready?" Deshawn asked softly from the doorway. He was already in his tailored suit, sharp yet understated, his eyes calm, reverent. "I've never been more ready," I whispered. By late afternoon, the estate glowed with guests, innovators, mentors, artists, survivors, all gathered in curved rows that embraced the ocean horizon. The cameras rolled, drones hovered silently, and whispers carried through the crowd about the mystery bride who had transformed her pain into a platform. The music began. I stepped onto the aisle, sunlight catching my gown until it fractured into prisms. A hush fell. Deshawn waited at the altar, his eyes misted. But we weren't the only ones watching. Back in Atlanta, my parents hosted their own cocktail hour, still clinging to appearances. Guests murmured over cocktails as the television in their lounge suddenly switched to a live broadcast. The designer's promise. My name, Leona Holt, appeared on the screen. The room fell silent. "Is that your daughter?" someone asked. "Why weren't you invited?" another whispered. They had no answer. At the altar, Deshawn and I exchanged vows, raw, hopeful, forged in fire and survival. When the officiant declared us husband and wife, the estate erupted in applause. Back in that Atlanta penthouse, silence pressed down like a weight. As twilight draped the coast, our reception bloomed into music, laughter, and light. But outside the gates, a black limousine pulled up. My parents stepped out, dressed in silver and velvet, with Maurice trailing behind, smug as ever. Photographers scurried to capture the scene. They approached the security checkpoint with arrogance. "We're here for the bride," my mother said smoothly. The guard checked his tablet. "Your names aren't on the list." "We're family," Maurice scoffed. She must have forgotten. The guard's voice was steady. "This is a private event. If you're not on the list, you're not coming in." My father snapped. "Do you know who we are?" "Yes, sir," the guard replied. "And that's exactly why you're not getting in." Within minutes, the footage hit the live stream. Social media exploded. Imagine disowning your daughter, then trying to crash her televised wedding. The hashtag too late began trending. On a balcony overlooking the ocean, Deshawn handed me his phone. I watched the clip of their humiliation, the exact moment realization hit their faces. Then I glanced at my own phone. A text from my mother. "Can we come in?" I typed 2 words. Too late. I didn't send it out of revenge. I sent it out of peace. Because this day was never about destroying them. It was about reclaiming myself, my voice, my worth, my story. As laughter carried across the estate and the waves roared softly below, I finally understood. Their absence wasn't a wound anymore. It was a boundary. And boundaries are beautiful.